Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time joining us, I want to give you a genuinely warm welcome, because today's story is one of those rare moments where a title that fans have been using affectionately for years gets picked up, validated, and explained in detail by an actual fashion publication, and the reasoning behind it turns out to be even more fascinating than the nickname itself. And if you've been with this community for a while, you already know how much we love it when the outside world independently arrives at conclusions Army has held for a long time. So today we are talking about Esquire Korea's description of Jimin as the Dior prince, the K-pop star they say suits the house better than anyone else, and we are going to walk through exactly why that title exists, what specific evidence supports it, and one particular detail about his most recent Dior appearance that left fans around the world completely stunned. Please hit that like button, make sure you are subscribed, and let's get into every layer of this story together. Let us begin with the quote itself, because the specific language Esquire Korea used matters enormously. The magazine, one of the most respected and widely read men's lifestyle and fashion publications not just in Korea but across the broader Asian market, posed a rhetorical question in their coverage that I think deserves to be quoted precisely. They wrote, in essence, the group that best fits the phrase, bringing honor to the nation, isn't it BTS? And among them, the K-pop star who suits Dior the best, the Dior prince, Jimin. That phrasing is deliberate and significant. Esquire Korea is not simply saying that Jimin wears Dior well. They are making a comparative claim, explicitly placing him above every other member of BTS, a group whose members individually represent some of the most recognizable faces in global luxury fashion advertising, and beyond that, above every other K-pop artist currently serving as an ambassador for the house. Out of an entire industry of extraordinarily stylish, internationally famous idols who could plausibly be described as embodying Dior's aesthetic, Esquire Korea's editorial judgment singles out one specific name as the definitive answer. And then the magazine goes further, articulating exactly what they mean by that claim with a level of specificity that elevates this from a passing compliment into something closer to a documented trend analysis. They wrote that every time Jimin wears Dior, it becomes a hot topic, causing instant sellouts starting from his airport looks, and that this particular season was no exception, as his attendance at Paris Fashion Week and the Dior collection made waves once again. Let's sit with that claim for a moment, because it is an extraordinarily strong one for a fashion publication to make about any individual ambassador. They are saying that the commercial effect of Jimin choosing to wear a piece of Dior clothing, even in something as casual and unstaged as an airport departure, captured by paparazzi rather than styled for an official campaign, is consistent and significant enough to merit being called a recurring, citable phenomenon. Not a one-time viral moment. A pattern. A pattern significant enough that Esquire Korea's editors felt comfortable stating it as established fact in their coverage, rather than as speculation or fan opinion. Now let us walk through the specific moment that prompted this most recent wave of coverage, because the details here are genuinely remarkable and explain exactly why the Dior Prince title resurfaced with such intensity. On the afternoon of June 24th, Jimin attended the Dior Summer 2027 menswear show in Paris in his role as the house's global ambassador. The appearance generated an extraordinary amount of immediate digital engagement. According to data tracked and shared publicly, Jimin generated more than 550,000 posts across social media within just a few hours of attending the show. 550,000 posts. In a few hours. From a single Fashion Week appearance. To put that into perspective, that is the kind of post volume that entire major news events sometimes fail to generate in a similar timeframe, and it was produced by fans, media outlets, and fashion commentators all reacting to a single afternoon at a single runway show in Paris. Fans flooded comment sections and social platforms describing him using language that, frankly, reads like something out of a fairy tale, and I think it's worth quoting some of this directly because it shows you the emotional register this appearance generated. People called him the main character and the main event of the entire Dior Men's Summer 2027 presentation, meaning that even though the show itself was, on paper, about Jonathan Anderson's runway collection, a significant portion of public attention and conversation ended up centering on Jimin's presence in the audience. Comments described his princely aura as insane, referred to him as the global IT boy, and one widely circulated post read simply, "If royalty was a person, it'll be Jimin." Another fan wrote that he looks exactly like a fairy tale prince who just stepped out of a storybook. This is the emotional and cultural context into which Esquire Korea's Dior Prince framing lands, not as an isolated nickname invented in a vacuum, but as the natural, almost inevitable descriptor for a pattern of public reaction that had already been building organically across multiple platforms in multiple fashion seasons. But here is where the story takes its most fascinating turn, and it is the detail that I think genuinely justifies calling this entire moment historic rather than simply another well-received Fashion Week appearance. At the event, Jimin appeared in a layered ensemble that included what initially looked like a striking aristocratic tailcoat featuring an ornate embroidered motif. Many observers, fans included, assumed this was simply a new piece from the upcoming Dior Summer 2027 collection, which would already have been notable, since brand ambassadors attending Fashion Week shows are typically given priority access to showcase upcoming season pieces as a way of building anticipation for the collection. And in fact, when the new collection itself was unveiled on the runway, fans did notice a garment featuring a similar embroidered motif, albeit rendered in a different color, which seemed to confirm the assumption that what Jimin wore was a preview piece tied to the new line. But that was not the full story. The aristocratic tailcoat Jimin actually wore was not part of the Dior Summer 2027 collection at all. It was not a commercial garment, and it was not something that would ever be available for purchase, the way that pieces modeled by runway models or destined for retail typically are. Instead, what Jimin wore that day was a one-of-a-kind historical masterpiece, estimated to be approximately 250 years old, owned by the Mark Wallace Collection, a renowned collection specializing in antique European aristocratic garments. 250 years old. A surviving piece of authentic 18th-century aristocratic fashion history, the kind of object that would typically belong behind museum glass or within the carefully controlled environment of a specialized private collection, rather than being worn live, in public, by anyone at all, let alone serving as a styling choice for a celebrity attending a Fashion Week event. It appears that Dior's design team may have drawn direct creative inspiration from this exact historic garment when developing certain elements of their new Summer 2027 collection, which would explain why fans spotted a similarly patterned, modern-day piece on the actual runway. But the truly extraordinary detail, the one that left fans across the world stunned when it began circulating, is that Jimin was granted the privilege of wearing the original historical piece itself, the only surviving version of that specific garment in existence, rather than a modern reproduction or commercial interpretation of it. Think about what that decision represents from Dior's perspective. Entrusting a 250-year-old, irreplaceable piece of fashion history, sourced from a specialized private antique collection, to be worn by a living person at a public event is not a decision any fashion house makes casually. It requires an extraordinary level of trust in that person's care, trust in their ability to represent the garment's significance appropriately, and trust that their presence in that garment will generate exactly the kind of reverent, historically minded attention that justifies taking on the considerable risk involved in letting a quarter-millennium-old textile leave a controlled collection environment. When this information began circulating online, the reaction from fans was, understandably, somewhere between disbelief and absolute pride. People wrote things like, "What an absolutely gorgeous piece of history worn by ParkJimin, who transformed a museum-worthy masterpiece into a living work of art," and, "So proud of you, Jimin," and one particularly memorable comment read, "Aristocrat clothes put on JM, this guy really is the real royal prince." Another fan succinctly summarized the entire emotional thread running through the reactions, "That is why he looked so regal." Because of course he did. He was, quite literally, wearing an authentic piece of European aristocratic history, and somehow, by every account from people who witnessed it, he carried the 250-year-old garment with the kind of natural, unforced elegance that made it look like it had been tailored specifically for him in the present day, rather than borrowed across a span of nearly 3 centuries. I want to take a moment to talk about why this specific privilege, being granted access to a historical, one-of-a-kind antique piece rather than simply a preview of upcoming commercial designs, represents such a significant marker of trust and status within the relationship between Jimin and Dior. In the world of high fashion, there is a meaningful hierarchy of access that brands extend to the individuals they work with. At the most basic level, there is simply wearing the brand's current commercial line. One step above that is early or exclusive access to upcoming seasonal collections before they are publicly available, the kind of access most brand ambassadors receive as a matter of course. But access to genuine historical archive pieces, especially pieces sourced from outside collections rather than the brand's own internal archive, represents something else entirely. It signals that the house considers that individual capable of representing not just their current commercial identity, but the deeper, more rarefied cultural and historical weight the brand carries, the kind of access typically reserved for the smallest handful of people whose presence a brand believes will do justice to genuinely irreplaceable cultural artifacts. This is not the first time Jimin's relationship with Dior has generated this kind of historic, record-setting attention either, and I think it's worth placing this moment within that broader pattern, because it reinforces just how consistent this trajectory has been since the very beginning of his ambassadorship. When Dior first announced Jimin as a global ambassador, the Instagram post making that announcement surpassed 4 million likes, becoming, at the time, the most liked post in the brand's entire history. At the Dior Men Fall/Winter 2023-2024 show, photographs of Jimin reportedly outperformed images of internationally established superstars including David Beckham and Robert Pattinson in engagement rankings, meaning that within his very first year representing the house, Jimin was already generating more digital engagement around his Dior appearances than figures who have spent decades building global recognition across film, sport, and entertainment. That is the foundation this most recent 250-year-old tailcoat moment is built upon, not an isolated incident, but the latest chapter in a consistent, multi-year pattern of Jimin's presence generating record-breaking engagement and increasingly significant brand trust. There is also something worth noting about the broader timing of this particular Paris Fashion Week stretch, because Jimin was not the only BTS member generating this kind of attention during the same week. A day before Jimin's Dior appearance, fellow member J-Hope attended the Louis Vuitton Men's Spring/Summer 2027 runway show as a brand ambassador for that house, generating substantial social media engagement of his own. And beyond their individual Fashion Week commitments, the rest of BTS had also been traveling to Europe in preparation for the European leg of the Arirang World Tour, with the group set to begin that European run with 2 concerts in Madrid. This is a moment where multiple members of BTS were simultaneously representing some of the most significant luxury fashion houses in the world on the same European Fashion Week calendar, while also preparing for one of the most anticipated stadium tour legs of their entire comeback era, a genuinely remarkable convergence of individual brand significance and collective group momentum happening at the exact same time. Let us return to the deeper meaning of the Dior Prince title itself, because I think there is something worth examining about why this specific phrase has resonated so consistently across multiple years and multiple fashion seasons, rather than fading after a single viral moment the way most internet nicknames tend to. Esquire Korea's description specifically credits Jimin's calm demeanor, his elegant presence, and what they describe as his ability to effortlessly pull off any design, suggesting that the title feels like it was created specifically for him. That phrase, effortlessly pull off any design, is doing a lot of work, because it speaks to something beyond simply looking good in expensive clothing. It speaks to a specific kind of physical and presentational intelligence, the ability to inhabit a garment, regardless of its era, its formality, or its cultural origin, in a way that reads as natural rather than performed. That is an unusually difficult quality to embody consistently, and it is precisely the quality that made Dior's decision to entrust him with an irreplaceable 250-year-old garment make sense in hindsight, even though it initially stunned fans who learned about it. I also want to acknowledge something about the cultural significance of an authentic 18th-century aristocratic garment being worn, in 2026, by a K-pop artist from South Korea, at one of the most historically significant fashion houses in France. There is a genuinely fascinating cultural symmetry at work in that image, centuries of European aristocratic fashion history, preserved carefully within a specialized private collection, being brought back into living, public use through the body and presence of an artist whose own career represents one of the most significant cultural exports the modern era has produced. Esquire Korea's framing of Jimin as someone who brings honor to the nation, used in direct connection with this Dior story, captures something real about how cultural significance moves in multiple directions simultaneously in moments like this, Jimin honoring the historical weight of the garment by wearing it with the right kind of reverence and elegance, and in turn, that garment's centuries of history being reintroduced to a massive, contemporary, globally distributed audience. Specifically because of who chose to wear it and how they chose to wear it. For ARMY, I think there is something particularly satisfying about watching a nickname that has circulated within the fandom for years, Dior Prince, used affectionately and repeatedly across fan edits, captions, and casual conversation, receive this kind of substantive, evidence-based validation from a respected international fashion publication. It is one thing for fans to call someone a prince because they love him and think he looks regal in nice clothes. It is another thing entirely for a major fashion magazine to independently arrive at the exact same descriptor, then back it up with documented evidence of consistent commercial impact, historic engagement records, and in this latest and most extraordinary instance, being personally entrusted with an irreplaceable quarter-millennium-old piece of fashion history that no other contemporary public figure has been given access to wear. That is not branding. That is not marketing. That is a fashion house and a respected industry publication independently agreeing, through their actions and their words respectively, that there is something genuinely singular about how Jimin carries himself within the world of high fashion, something that, in their professional judgment, fully earns him the title of Dior Prince. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If learning about that 250-year-old tailcoat left you as stunned as it left fans around the world, please show some love with a thumbs up. It genuinely helps this channel grow and lets me know you want more deep dives into these incredible fashion moments. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that button right now, because we are going to keep covering every single development in Jimin's continuing relationship with Dior and every other major fashion moment as it unfolds. Drop a comment below, were you as shocked as I was to learn that garment was an actual antique, and do you think Dior Prince is the perfect title for him? I read every single comment, and I genuinely love hearing your thoughts on these stories. Take care of yourselves, Army. I will see you in the next one.